as we all work on resilience, we're here gathered at the forum in the wake of the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, the agreement to the Sustainable Development Goals by governments around the world, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals last September. And so now governments and businesses and all of us are on a new path. And so the forum is timed for really two reasons: for all of us to get together and connect and share best practices and get inspired and find ways to work together, but also to help us here locally, so a little selfishly, help us be that petri dish and that model that we aim to become with the collaboration of people like Nina. And so I wanted to start out with a little bit of Idaho. So that's where we are, because I know some people get confused. We're in the Midwest. No. We're next to Washington and Oregon. And as you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful state, but it's also named after a Native American word for land of many waters. It's called the Gem State. That's our official nickname, not the Potato State. It's nearly every known type of gemstone has been found in the state of Idaho. Idaho's Capitol building is the only one in the United States heated by geothermal water. The hot water is tapped and pumped from a source 3,000 feet underground. You might have noticed there's a lot of hot springs around here. We have a very, very hot state. At 7,993 feet deep, Hell's Canyon in western Idaho is the deepest river gorge in North America. The Grand Canyon is only 6,000 feet deep. Idaho is famous for potatoes, producing about 1/3 of the potatoes grown in the US. We have to acknowledge that. Idaho's state seal is the only one in the US designed by a woman, and it depicts a miner, a woman, and various natural resources of Idaho. Sacagawea was born in Idaho. She's the Shoshone woman who accompanied Lewis and Clark. Who knows where they would have been without her. Our state insect, for those of you monarch lovers like Shelley Cohen, the monarch butterfly is our state insect. And just in case we may be just too cool, our state dance is the square dance. So next slide, please. So Idaho is filled with beautiful scenic byways, and we are the largest roadless area in the lower 48. So get out and explore. Yes. Next slide, but it's at great risk. Idaho has a D+, for those of you who can't quite see that, it's a D+ on our preparedness for climate change impacts. So what they say is we're falling behind other states because it reflects the fact that the state of Idaho has taken almost no action to plan for its future climate risks or implement adaptation measures to improve the state's resilience, and the threats are around extreme heat, drought, and wildfire. So it's time for us to take some urgent action. Next slide. Our beautiful community is so filled with incredible assets: the nature, the theater, the arts, people, local food production, our farmers markets, athleticism, all of the incredible opportunities to be out in the outdoors, but it too is at risk. Next slide, please. We're highly isolated. So imported energy and food, 99% of our energy, 99% of our food. Continue, please. We're a high desert ecosystem, so a lot of drought and risks around that. We also inequality. So 50% of our residents are on some form of public assistance. A lot of that has to do with the challenges around seasonal industries. And a concentrated economy. About 70% of our economy relies on recreation and tourism. And so when things like fires hit us in the summer in the heart of our tourism industry, and we have changes in snowfall in the winter, it creates a lot of risk for us. Next slide, please. So none of this was a problem really that we were aware of until we had the second largest fire in the country. Next slide, please. Mandatory evacuations. Here you couldn't see more than a block in the mornings in the midst of this fire in 2013. It was the second largest fire that year. It would have been, but for that massive Yosemite fire, the largest fire in the country, cost us $40 million. Next slide, please. So that was a real wake-up call. Next, please. To the acute vulnerabilities in our community, and that we really needed to focus on how we could grow our resilience. Next slide, please. And so resilience, the capacity to survive, adapt, and thrive in the face of chronic stresses and acute shocks, and that's what we're working towards. And so working to address our risks and turn them into opportunities, such as local energy, local food, invest in our people and our natural systems to do so. Next slide, please. And so what we're working on is strategy and building capacity. Next slide. And these are some of our partners with whom we're working to build that capacity. Incredible local partners, including our schools, our Environmental Resource Center, which is an educational center here, as well as our academic partners who've been fantastic to date. Next slide, please. Water is a massive risk for us, as we talked about with that D+ rating, drought, extreme heat. And so it's undervalued here. We have to use it or lose it. And so it really incentivizes people to use a lot of water in their agricultural activities. Next slide, please. And our food, we are the 5th at most expensive county in the nation for food. And yet we have this incredible land that where we could be growing local food to address some of those risks. Energy is another risk, and that's the first area where the Institute has launched a program along with the great work that we're doing with our Local Food Alliance, which Ali Long is one of our board members founded, and we're now part of the Institute working together on local food and working with local institutions to increase local food production and consumption and education around food. But energy was one of the reasons we founded the Institute, because we had so many risks around the reliability, its cost to the economy. We spend $80 million a year out of our community instead of investing it here on local energy, and of course the environmental impact of that. Next slide, please. This is our mix on our current electric mix, and so about 38% hydro, about 35% coal. And the hydro's at risk as well because we're having those changes of water availability. Next slide, please. But we believe it's a real opportunity for us to go local with our energy and increase the resilience of our energy system. Next slide, please. We have great solar, so that's the first thing we're doing. We're just 10% less than Texas and about the same as Florida. So you look at those solar maps, they come right up into the state. Next slide, please. And it's cost effective for us. So average home here, the payback conservatively is 14 years on a solar system, 25-year system, save you over $10,000 on your power bill. So no brainer. Next slide. And so our strategy is to build that great reliability by going local, adding in storage and potentially a microgrid, and reduce our environmental impacts and create real quality year-round jobs here in the community. Next slide, please. So Solarize Blaine was our first program. It's been going up for about 4 months. We have 180 people signed up, about 15 or 20 contracts signed. People are going solar by the end of July. And Katie Bray is our energy program manager, so if you have the chance to meet her, I recommend it. She ran 8 of these programs in North Carolina before joining us. We met her through the Rocky Mountain Institute, and she's an incredible asset to our team. She and Russell Train are working together on that program, so be sure to meet them. Next slide, please. And these are Scott, who's here, Scott Runkle, science teacher at the community school, going solar. And you can just flip through these real quick. We'll jump ahead, and I'll pass it off to our incredible opening keynote speaker. So these are just our local folks talking about why they're going solar with Solarize Blaine. And we believe that this is a real opportunity to put the sun in Sun Valley. This is not partly Cloudy Valley, this is Sun Valley. So let's tie in with the brand. Next slide. And our visitors expect leadership in this area. They come from places where they value it according to our marketing alliance, and this is something they're expecting from the communities they visit. Next slide, please. And it's a risk because we have other communities, our competitors in the ski industry who are leading with LEED buildings and with their environmental goals. And as you heard, Nina and the city of Ketchum and now the city of Sun Valley and others are starting to really lead in this area, which is an asset to us. And our next step on energy resilience is to work, as I said, towards this microgrid with all of these wonderful partners. Next slide, please. Another opportunity is around land use, around changing what we're growing, as I talked about earlier, to address that food risk and reduce our water consumption and chemical inputs. We're excited to be working with landowners to shift what they're growing. Next slide. And so just what we're up to, innovation and leadership, research, publications with Michael Schumann, who's here, and you'll hear from tomorrow on local investment, which is a real opportunity to drive new economic opportunity into our communities. Next slide. And that was last year. Next. So the forum is a real chance for us, as I said, to get together. Next slide. Thank you. So final slide. So Christiana Figueres has just been nominated to be the UN Secretary General, and Christiana is and she is a friend to a lot of us. Met her in 1994 across the negotiating table when her brother was president of Costa Rica, and she is the reason, really, I truly believe this, that Paris was a success. And she talks about the question before us now is how to address the exigencies of a future so mired in complexity, which we've been talking about here, and that we need a vision of hope. We need to have that mission, that vision of hope, and a compelling vision of the future so that each of us can live to our highest purpose. And so hopefully here at the forum, you'll be inspired and excited and hopeful as we move forward. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Paul Hawken, our incredible, incredible first speaker. Paul, come on up, so I don't want to waste any more time. Thank you.